Hello. The Chris's have kringled, the Yules have logged, and we are recapping 2023 in Sumo. Season Salt Throw.
Throw the salt, get in the ring. Welcome to the Dohyo.
Hello and welcome back to the Dohyo here on MrJWags channel. It has been a fascinating year in Sumo, it has been a fascinating year for the channel, and I'm sure for all of us here. Before we get into the Sumo, to update everyone on the two holiday channel updates we have had. Number one, the Kickstarter is in its final week, so if you have not had a chance to check out the Kickstarter, any level of support is very welcome. Check that out. It ends on New Year's Eve. And also, I am testing negative for COVID. Happy Merry to everyone. I am feeling great. Thank you for all the well wishes. They are much appreciated. Not only did we have an amazing year in Sumo, but the Dohyo has passed a few milestones itself this year. We have ended our 4th year. We passed our 130th episode. We passed 2,000 subscribers, 10,000 watch hours, and 100,000 views this year. Wow. So it's just, I had no idea this was going to happen when I started doing this show 4 years ago. But hey, those of you who have stuck around, thank you so much. We had 10 wrestlers make their Makauchi debut in 2023. Kinbozan, Hokuseiho, Bushozan, Gonoyama, Shonan no Umi, Hakuoho, Tohakiryu, Chuda no Umi, Roga, and Kita no Waka. And you cannot have debuts without also having retirements. Sunrise, sunset. And we said goodbye to some of our Makauchi favorites this year. Maegashira 12, Akiseyama. Maegashira 11, Azumaryu. Maegashira 1, Chiyonokuni, who had 6 lower division Yusho, 2 Kantosho, and 1 Kinboshi. And in perhaps the most Chiyonokuni stat of all, he got that Kinboshi versus Kakadyu in a basho where he finished 2-13. Famed disciple of Yokozuna Hakuho and everyone's favorite super jacked pixie, Ishiura. He retired with a high rank of Maegashira 5 and 1 Kanto Sho. Unfortunately, receiving his career-ending injury the tournament he was at his highest rank in March of 2022. We also say goodbye to Sekiwake Okino Umi. He finished his career with 3 Junyusho, 5 special prizes, 4 Kinboshi, and of course the undying devotion of everyone's favorite sumo commentator, Jason Harris. Perhaps our most surprising Yusho winner ever, Maegashira 2 Tokashoryu, who in January of 2020 pulled off one of the greatest upsets in sporting history, achieving a 14-1 Yusho from the very last slot on the Makauchi Bansake. In addition, he finished his career with a Jun Yusho, 2 special prizes, and 1 Kinboshi. Also former champion, the Mongolian mountain, Sekiwake Ichinojo. He of course won his only Yusho in Nagoya of 2022, but if you've been following the Shadow of Hakuho series, you know in the absence of Hakuho, he likely would have won 2 more. He finished his career with 4 special prizes and was the active leader in Kinboshi at the time of his retirement with 9. And the big retirement, the one that gets me right here, of course, Ozeki Tochinoshin. Now, of course, Tochinoshin retired as one of our most decorated Ozeki. He ended up having 11 special prizes, 2 Kinboshi, 4 Jun Yusho to, of course, go along with his Yusho and his final Ozeki promotion. He, of course, came back from a career-threatening injury in 2013 in dominating fashion to win a Yusho and gain Ozeki promotion. He was, of course, an incredibly popular Rikishi and one of our greatest European ambassadors for sumo across the world. So to all of our Intai this year, thank you so much for what you brought to sumo. You will be missed. 2023 also brought us the unfortunate passing of 2 members of the Oyakata community. Former Ozeki Asashio, who was also former Takasago Oyakata, had a spectacular career in the ring, culminating in his Yusho in 1985. Also achieving 4 Jun Yusho, 14 special prizes, and 5 Kinboshi. As an Oyakata, his famous disciples include Ozeki Asanoyama and Yokozuna Asashoryu. And only recently we lost the former Sekiwake Terao, also known as Shikuroyama Oyakata, or Abi's Oyakata. Now, those of you who don't know who Terao is, and we're a little bit late for Terao, if you can find some YouTubes of the guy, his matches are the best. If you are familiar with the fighting style of Abi, who do you think taught him that style? One of the most popular sekiwake in the sport's history, he achieved 7 kinboshi and 7 special prizes in his career. Well, to expand a bit on where we left off in the November recap and the whole extended Game of Thrones metaphor we left with, I think we have 4 major plot points we sort of have to wrestle with as we turn the corner into 2024. Number 1, I think we can say it after this year. The king is dead. We need a new king. The Yokozuna Terunofuji is never going to come back. He's been Kyujo 7 of the last 8 tournaments. We have seen this story before, and it never ends with the Yokozuna coming back after a whole extended Kyujo, and then, like, winning a bunch of tournaments in a row. No, you get maybe 1 or 2 tournaments back, and I think we had that this past May. While I do expect Terunofuji to take the ring in January, I do not expect him to finish the tournament, and I do not expect him to finish next year at Yokozuna. I know this may seem pessimistic, but I don't even know what a best-case scenario for Terunofuji's body would be next year. Completing 2 basho? Does anyone find that realistic? And, unfortunately, or not depending on your point of view, sumo tends to be organized around the idea of the alpha dog and everyone else sort of in the alpha dog's orbit. Terunofuji was our last unquestioned alpha dog, so who is stepping up next? That leads us to Chapter 2, our Emergent Ozeki. This year started off, remember, in a very, very odd place. We had no idea where our next Ozeki were going to come from, and we ended up getting 2 more, Kirishima and Hoshodyu. And man, we really needed the reinforcements. And after all the crazy Maegashira Yusho we've been having, it was a little kind of nice, a little settling to have a year where it's like, hey, every single Yusho is by someone who made Ozeki or by a resident Yokozuna. But the Ozeki rank has looked stronger than it has in years. We have the 3 Ozeki, and I think Kotonowaka is going to get up there sooner rather than later. What happens when you have 3 to 5 wrestlers of similar skill all up at the top? Remember, sumo is binary. Someone has to be getting the losses if someone else is getting the wins. It makes me think of Esteban Loaiza. Quick sidebar. Esteban Loaiza was a pitcher back in the 2000s, and he was a journeyman. He was a below-average pitcher for most of his 20s. And then he ended up signing with the Chicago White Sox, and all of a sudden he started doing great. And everyone's like, oh, how could this pitcher who's in his 30s, not a time when people start doing better in their athletic career normally, start peaking at this time? And I know what you're all thinking. Steroids. It ended up being a brand new pitch. He started throwing it, and he had his best season. Now I know baseball is not sumo, but what I'm bringing up is the idea of a small marginal improvement leading to a large exponential growth in performance. Now not only does a new pitch make a pitcher's arsenal more effective because there's frankly more pitches, but it makes every other pitch more effective because now there is greater doubt as to which pitch the pitcher is going to throw. Make sense? It is a small marginal improvement that leads to an overall bump in total performance. So the question is, can this group of Ozeki and Ozeki hopeful be the next Esteban Loaiza? And don't look at the other things about Esteban Loaiza. Things didn't end well for him. But can any of those Ozeki or Ozeki hopefuls make that small marginal improvement, make a huge performance jump, and leap ahead of the pack in the Yokozuna ranks? Quick sidebar. And that brings us to Chapter 3. We've been getting a lot of noise from the youths. Now, I know every year we talk about the exciting new wave, but this year's crop feels a cut above. From Atami Fuji's resurgence to the explosion of Hakuoho onto the scene to Onosato making his Makauchi debut in January, we have 3 young hotnesses rising through the ranks very, very quickly. Now, I don't see any of these 3 guys as being a lightning bolt sort of Yokozuna in the same way that like Asashoryu or Hakuho was. And some of these guys have already gotten hurt and are having surgery, so obviously their arc will be a little bit slower. But they are all getting stronger and faster and smarter. How long is it going to take them before they start jumping up and knocking on the same door that the Ozeki hopefuls will be knocking on this year? As I've said before, I think the current group of Rikishi that are like in their peak, sort of like the 26 to 29-year-olds, I think they've got about a year and a half left before the young hotness comes back and blows them out of the water. I'm sorry, I just don't see a world where like Onosato and Atami Fuji and Hakuoho don't get better and challenge for Yusho in the next couple years. So for the guys at the top of the Banzuke, time to make some hay while the sun shines. And our final chapter in the Story of Sumo for 2023. There is no new Hakuho coming. The paradigm of sumo that we have been sort of living with, I think almost all the way back since Futabayama, if not Raiden and Tanakaze, is the idea that you've got this one guy who's going to take on all comers, and it was Hakuho, and like Asa showed you for so long, and before that, Chiyo no Fuji, but we can trace that lineage back. Now it's sort of an open question. And there have been moments in sumo history where we didn't really have that one super alpha dog, like the Tama no Umi and Kita no Fuji years, sort of between Taiho and Kita no Umi. All I'm saying, sumo fans, is that for the next year or two, I think we have to accept the sumo excellence that we are given, and not be mad about the sumo excellence we are missing. There is only one Hakuho, and there's only ever going to be one Hakuho. Did a whole episode about it. Alright, so whose year was 2023? Now, just a reminder, this is not just a list of who the best wrestlers were. This is sort of a holistic overview of the year, and like, whose year was it? When we look back at 2023, what are we going to remember about these wrestlers and about these storylines, and who is really going to come to the fore? For example, last year, although he did not have, I think, the best year, I think last year will always be remembered as the year Mitakeyumi gained and lost Ozeki in the same year. So for good and bad reasons, last year belonged to Mitakeyumi. And we have a few honorable mentions before we reach our final rankings. Now, I've talked about these guys a little bit already, but Atami Fuji, Ono Sato, and Haku Oho. Guys, you're great, you're amazing, you're the young hotness, but just, not yet. Now, this was an incredible year for these three guys. Ono Sato, of course, is the least decorated of them, and he's shot pretty much directly up from Makushita up to Makauchi in less than a year. Hakuoho has already had a name change, made it up to Makauchi in like 3 tournaments, got there in his debut, got an 11-4, and was fighting for the Yusho on day 15. And Atami Fuji has ended the year on 3 straight 11-win basho, including 2 straight Jun Yusho at the Makauchi level. But Atami Fuji has not yet excelled up in the Sanyaku and the Joy yet, and that is the next level for him. There is going to be a ceiling for Atami Fuji. I just need to see where that is before we can start claiming greatness and getting real predictions and projections for him. And that goes for the other guys too. I expect to see most, if not all 3 of these guys on next year's rankings. Also, honorable mention to Wakamoto Haru and Kotono Waka. Both of these guys hung out in the Sanyaku all year. Of course, Wakamoto Haru at the end had a little bit of a dip down. But all year he was up, he was in the conversation. He deserves an honorable mention, even though he couldn't quite get over the hump with the Ozeki run. Now, Kotono Waka had sort of like the converse year of Wakamoto Haru, in that he started going upward at the end of the year. Now, Kotono Waka had some 11-4s and a Jun Yusho, but he was never really like in it on day 15, so I don't really have him in the story of the year as much as I am positive he will be part of the story next year. And final honorable mention, Wakataka Kage. Yeah, his injury happened in March. Like, mid-March tournament, he ended up having an injury, and it sort of changed everything. Like, we all had sort of an idea of how the year would go, and a big part of the year, I thought, was going to be a Wakataka Kage Ozeki run, and it did not happen. So an honorable mention to him for fighting his way back from injury, and he's down in Makushita. He's going to work his way up into Judo next year. I think he's going to do it, and hopefully he fights his way back up into Makauchi. But yes, an honorable mention just to remind us all that, yeah, no matter what we are thinking going forward with any sort of predictions about the upcoming year, it can all go pretty fast. Number 5 on the rankings, Daisho. I think Daisho had an incredibly underrated year. He spent the year at Maegashira 1 or higher. Every single tournament was a Kachi Koshi. Now, he was only really like a contender in one of the tournaments, but still, like, he got 60 wins, and he's still on an Ozeki run. He's like a little long in the tooth, but he could still surprise us with a very strong 2024. His last chapter is yet to be written. Number 4 on our rankings, Yokozuna Terunofuji. Yeah, when your soul Yokozuna is 4th on the rankings for whose year it was, that's not a good thing. But this is sort of where all the Yokozuna end up. Unfortunately, Terunofuji's 2023 has been defined largely by his absence, and that one amazing breakout Yusho in May, which unfortunately I think is going to end up being his swan song. So yes, the spirit was always willing, but the body I think is just starting to betray him a little bit too much. I don't expect to see Terunofuji on next year's rankings. Now, since I mentioned that I think this year is about, like, declining Yokozuna and emerging Ozeki, I think you all can figure out who my top 3 are going to be. And it will probably come as no surprise that number 3 is Ozeki Hoshoryu. Now, I feel like if we were giving out, like, homework from last year to this year, like, Hoshoryu, he did all the homework. It's like, well, he got Kachikoshi up in the Sanyaku all year, ended up just, like, slowly working his way through the ranks, ended up slowly improving every 4 to 6 basho or so, and worked his way into Ozeki with his first Yusho. Like, it all makes sense. Now, the reason he's only number 3, well, we had 2 other guys who won 2 Yusho this year. And no one expects this to be the end for Hoshoryu. He turns 25 during the Mei Basho this year. So yes, this is the year Hoshoryu made Ozeki, but I don't think this is the year Hoshoryu makes his name. Now we're getting into it, the final 2. This one was really tough. I went back and forth on this one, and it sort of has to go back to the central idea of the episode. It's not who's the best wrestler, it's whose year was it. So if we were talking about who had the best year as a wrestler, it would definitely be number 2, Ozeki Kirishima, or as we like to call him at the beginning of the year, Kiribayama. But yes, on paper, he was the best. He had the most wins. 62 wins for the year. He had 2 Yusho. He had a Jun Yusho. He had 3 Ginosho technique prizes. That is an excellent resume for a single year of sumo. I mean, he had a Kyujo at Nagoya this year, but no one cares about that. He bounced back with his career best basho in November. He's coming off of a 13-2, and he is in the catbird seat for Yokozuna right now. The question is next year going to be the year of Kirishima? The year of Yokozuna Kirishima? And of course, that means number 1, Ozeki Takakeisho. Yes, 2023 belongs to Ozeki Takakeisho. And I say this because he has gone through every extreme an Ozeki can possibly go through in a single year. There are only 6 basho in a year, and this guy managed to get 2 Yusho, 2 Kyujo, and as a result of those 2 Kyujo, 2 Kataban scares. And remember, back at the beginning of the year, we only had 1 Ozeki, so Kataban scares were very frightening. So no, Takakeisho was not the best wrestler this year, but every single basho, he was driving the story. Everything he did was important. And I hate to say this because I don't like thinking about it, but this might be peak Takakeisho. When we look at the body of work of Takakeisho, and we look at the body of Takakeisho, we have to wonder, can he materially improve? This is a guy who hasn't had a 13-2 in a while. He's never gotten better than a 13-2. The Kyujo have started to pile up. He did win 2 basho this year, but how many more do we see going forward? I think this might be the last gasp of Takakeisho's Yokozuna hopes, and for that reason, I think 2023 belongs to Takakeisho. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Dohyo. I mean, not only just for this episode, but also for joining us for this year. We've been doing this for 4 years, so thank you of finding and coming back to this weird little corner of sumo insanity on the internet. Thank you so much to everyone who has supported the Kickstarter, and if you haven't, there's still time. Check it out. And an extra special thank you to those of you who have given this channel a second chance. I know a lot of you tried the channel maybe for the first time, and it wasn't your cup of tea, but for whatever reason, you came back and gave the channel a second try, and you stayed. So thank you so very much for that. We've loved having you. Alright, I think that is going to be it for 2023 on the Dohyo. So however you decide to celebrate winter, I hope it is a good one. Everyone stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy, and I will see you next year on the Dohyo.